Today, we discuss whether or not we're likely to see the appearance of Glamrock Bonnie in the FNAF Security Breach DLC, whatever the DLC ends up being. So, let's do it. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in-game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM, and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag, security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM, Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM, Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing. Since, in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because like we know Monty loves smashing things, so like that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant, who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, Burn Trap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on Burn Trap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. Both things that he was missing, or were more damaged at the time, while in his scrap trap form. Seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun. Maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work. Like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. But if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter. Unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're gonna give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there like with super glue. Because like they were deep in there, because you know, he was shoved full of machine parts. So yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie wouldn't end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one. So at this point, we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to this story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no bunny in this pizza Plex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next, since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we use to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers. Because, like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because, like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kind of like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like, maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods, but also the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. But like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod. The most popular FNAF DLC concept at the moment seems to be the Choose Your Guardian DLC. The idea behind this, brought to us by Reddit user space_bear, was that you'd play through the story of Security Breach again, but this time choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. I'm assuming you could also choose Glamrock Freddy again, just because. While most of the game would remain the same if you were with Monty, with the mechanics of like hiding inside the chest cavity anyway, I'm sure that there would be some issues if it came to Roxy or Chica, which would result in them having to carry you onto their back. In the comments, it was also suggested that this could be used as a way to make the animatronics faster, but you wouldn't be safe from the other animatronics since they could still see you because, you know, you're on their shoulders. But how could these characters work if this was actually put into the game? That's what we're exploring today. let's do it. Now, as I just mentioned, Roxy's body isn't really all that big. And while Gregory is able to fit his entire body in a hole that is just over 14 inches tall in Glamrock Freddy, I still don't know how that works, I don't think that he'd be able to fit himself inside of Roxy's tiny torso. But considering how she's the fastest animatronic, sprinting at you when she sees you or even hears you after her destruction, it's safe to say that maybe the mechanic would instead be riding on her shoulders, which would make for better movement speed since she wouldn't have to worry about crushing you while you're inside, but also adding more vulnerability since the other animatronics would be able to see you on her and would follow. This would also make for way too much fan art of Gregory riding Roxy, more than there already is. Honestly, you search up glam rock and you see get your glam rocks off, and I wish I was kidding. But the question is, how would Roxy be the one who glitches instead of Freddy? Since the story seems to be, at least currently, that Freddy glitches because the spirit of Michael senses a little brother in Gregory, or maybe even senses that Gregory is his little bro. But assuming that that's just a theory, how would they work this into the actual, like, canon? Like, Gregory can't really hide inside Roxy's stomach after all, so how would he be able to get into her green room? My best guess would be something having to do with her insecurities. Maybe Gregory overheard her and then followed her into the green room to help her. Or maybe since he still needs to be scared of Vanessa, he turns Roxy against Vanessa by saying that the security guard is calling her ugly and saying that Chica's the prettier animatronic. At least Roxy would be down for destroying the other animatronics in that case, as long as she gets to stay pretty. Monty's gameplay would seemingly be the most like Freddy's, with his wider torso allowing for Gregory to hide inside. But really, I can't see this character being sympathetic towards a kid at all. Like, he's got a very rockstar attitude, and I'd only see him helping Gregory if Gregory was doing stuff for Monty, you know? Like, if Monty was decommissioned or something by Vanessa for destroying his green room, and then Gregory got him working again. That's really the only way I would see these two working together, although this would come with the benefit of Monty's claws already working. Unless for story and gameplay reasons they gave that upgrade to Freddy and said that he needed it to hold on to the microphone better or something, or maybe like turn it on, something like that. Either way, I don't think Monty would mind that, especially since he would get to destroy Freddy. Something that we see from both the van ending and in the last level of Monty Golf, he's more than fine with doing. He might not want to hurt Chica or Roxy because of course every great rock star needs their backup singers, but he would certainly help you with Freddy. Which brings up the problem of where Freddy's boss battle would be. Obviously he'd be the other option between Chica and Roxy, since Roxy's eyes are too overpowered to keep for the long haul. However, Freddy seemingly doesn't have his own area. Chica has the kitchen, which is where her battle takes place because she loves pizza, but she also has Mazer Size. Monty has a mini golf course, and Roxy has a racetrack. So where would Freddy have his boss battle? My best guess would actually be Phaser Blast. Sure, we have to avoid Chica while we play, but assuming we're playing with someone else as our guardian, it would make the most sense for Freddy to be here. Plus, the disassemble ending could be very useful here, since we could use the staff bots Vanny uses in that ending as like our way of destroying Freddy. Maybe he'd end up knocking the remote down or something, and then we could take it and say disassemble Freddy, something like that. That might cause some issues with the whole Chica thing, because then you have to go to the Bonnie Bowl to get the whole Monty mix to crush Chica. But I mean, we could move Monty's mix into Monty Golf, because I feel like that would also make sense. Chica would have to operate in much the same way as Roxy would in this fictional scenario, with us most likely being carried around on her shoulders. And while she may not be as much of a sprinter as Roxy, she can certainly move quickly. If we're giving difficulties to the animatronics, I think that Chica would definitely be like the hard mode out of all of these, since she doesn't really have any unique abilities. Maybe the voice box would be included, but that's something needed to unlock the main boss room, so it would kind of break the story and make it way easier. So maybe instead they could work it out so Freddy would have like a good voice box that we could steal, so that maybe Chica would instead soothe the animatronics, or maybe after we damage him, his voice box goes from good to broken and then it just screeches like the original. But other than that, I don't really know how this would work. Like, I don't know how this would be different. Like, maybe instead of the whole screeching Chica's ability, she'd be able to move us around in a hiding spot, like if it had wheels, since there are more wheels than doors. I mean, since Chica loves food, seeing her move around garbage or recycling bins may not be an unusual thing. Like, maybe she's just bringing it back to snack on in her green room. So if we were hiding in one of the various bins, maybe while inside we could call her over by pushing Q, and she would end up like grabbing on to the hiding spot and kind of like pushing us around, as long as there was enough space for it. so obviously like smaller ones would be more maneuverable but also more suspicious. I don't know. Obviously other animatronics could still inspect the hiding spot while she's holding it, and if Vanessa saw her, she would absolutely inspect it. But other than that, I think that the whole mechanic where she pushes you around would be an interesting addition, and it would make Chica a unique guardian and set her apart from Roxy, since at that point they were kind of the same thing. Although it would certainly make things interesting if we're all like, oh yeah, mommy Chica's pushing around Gregory in a stroller. Oh no. Obviously, if this were the actual DLC, Freddy would just end up replacing whatever animatronic was guarding you within the story. So if you chose Roxy, he would have the eyes, etc. Like, they'd have to find a reason for it, but I mean, like, in my humble opinion, it seems wrong if Freddy isn't the one protecting you. But this absolutely would be a fun DLC concept. But hey, if they don't do it, we can always mod it into the game, right? Just like swap a couple models around and then you're good to go. There are also some seriously dope voice actors out there who love the series, and I'm sure they would want to help out. Or maybe some voice actors are looking to add stuff into their portfolio so they can get more work, who would be willing to help. I mean, like, maybe the Freddy voice could be fairly easy. TikTok has been doing it as a trend, and if TikTok can do it, I'm sure we can do it for a mod. So like, maybe it's not such a long shot for a mod after all, like I originally thought. But why am I suggesting a mod though? Because unfortunately, I don't think that this DLC concept is going to get made, okay? I hate to say it, but while it is an incredible and extremely fun idea, the DLC that they do add to this game would most likely be canon to the main series of games. In fact, we haven't had a main series game that wasn't canon. And despite the last DLC claiming it was nothing more than a festive holiday themed add-on with no hidden intent or purpose, we know better than that. And making it so that any of these characters could protect you would probably ruin the story in some aspects and make the next game harder to set up. And while FNAF 4's Halloween DLC at the time that it came out was claimed to be non-canon with the exception of Nightmare Balloon Boy, Nightmare Eon and Nightmare Mangle did end up making it into Ultimate Custom Night, which would mean that Crying Child would have seen them. So eventually, even if they weren't at the time, they did end up becoming canon eventually. Meaning that since this would mess up at least like the story that we understand from the games, with the exception of like the canon ending, but like then again, it's still kind of weird. If we're right or even on the right track about what the story is, I don't think that this would honestly be possible. It would honestly kind of come out of nowhere. It would kind of come out of left field story-wise, unless they end up making it a DLC because everyone is asking for it, rather than a DLC that will actually help answer some of the questions we have from the game, since they might want to keep things vague and open-ended for whoever is taking over next. But I guess then again, we'll see when they announce a DLC, if they announce a DLC. I'd still prefer a daytime mode though, or even secure and neutralize from the DLC top 10 list. And 10 meaningless collectibles. While yes, the collectibles are fun things that you can go around and steal all over the Pizzaplex, I think that a DLC adding more collectibles that don't have any significance is a pretty bad idea. There are plenty of difficult to find collectibles already. So if you're to make more in a DLC, I think that they should actually have some form of meaning with those collectibles. Whether they're references or Easter eggs, it doesn't really matter, but we definitely need some form of meaning, because getting all the normal collectibles that in reality are stealables, if you ask me, is already quite the task, especially if you keep the whole like you're unable to save after getting Roxy's eyes thing, because that is just some serious bad juju if you ask me. Although nobody really has asked me. We all hate the mechanic, alright? And at 9, repaired animatronics. Considering how the whole point of the game was to destroy these animatronics so that we'd end up wasting enough time for the doors to open, repairing the animatronics in this DLC for whatever reason it might be would be a huge disservice to the game. Like, yeah, you might need them for something, but if that's the case, you shouldn't have to have them repaired. Plenty of different sections in the game use both destroyed and repaired animatronics depending on how you've completed the story. If you destroyed Chica and then go to Phaser Blast after the ending, you can end up having to dance around a destroyed Chica. So forcing repairs on these animatronics just destroys what we spent the entire game doing. We did it illegally, but also considering how the game is past 6 AM and will always be 6 AM, no matter how long you play at that point, you can be fairly certain that they would not be able to repair the animatronics in time. And it ain't bug fixes. Okay, now don't get me wrong, this game is in dire need of some serious bug fixes, but I, along with I'm sure everyone else, would be absolutely furious if those bug fixes came in the form of a DLC. At least if the DLC DLC is a separate purchase that we have to make, like the Help Wanted DLC was. If I have to pay for bug fixes that I should have already had, there's going to be a problem. Because if a game is released unfinished, there needs to be a remedy to that in the form of updates. Easy updates that fix the major issues with the game, like I don't know, falling through the world. And if there is a paywall to get those updates, I think I know a couple of websites that can help me get around that. Because in all honesty, that's incredibly messed up if the bug fixes will only be in the DLC. But I don't think Steelwool would do that. I just get worried since they're still working on updates but also still talking DLC. And it's 7 Daycare. The Moondrop Daycare section was certainly a great bit of fun, despite the constant darkness and the demon chasing you. It was strangely like my mind, actually. However, while this section was certainly fun and one of the best moments of the game, I don't really want to repeat it. It took me so long to do properly the first time, so any reason to have to go back into the daycare, whether it be because we dropped something or whatever other reason they'd come up with, I don't want to do it. Do not send me back to the goddamn daycare, or I swear to God. Like, it was fun the first time, but I'd rather not spend another 3 hours nearly ripping my dick off trying to find another generator. I don't want to deal with the daycare attendant at all, if that's possible. Just the fact that the first line as Moondrop is naughty naughty boy, it puts me on edge. Especially for a kid who's like the size of a 4-year-old. Not in real life. I'm taller than a 4-year-old, I hope. Okay, look, it's just setting off all kinds of radars, alright? And it's 6 post-credits. While yes, I said another ending would be nice in another video, having any post-credit scenes should really be saved for the next full game. Especially since we don't know where the next IP owner will be going with this series. So I'd like to leave the endings where they are. And any DLC should take place before the game starts or after 6 AM hits, since 6 AM seems to be the most logical time for any serious change to happen, since employees would be starting to come back and prepare for the day. So things like additional areas or attractions opening would make sense. Basically, the daytime protocols would activate. Or it could be like a DLC starts if you go to the main stage when Vanessa asks you to when you're trying to leave. When you're trying to get to the main doors while the daycare attendant's chasing you and she says, oh, come to the main stage. Yeah, that could do that. And it could start like a whole new story kind of mission with, wait for it, autosaves. That would be amazing. Someone in a recent video also mentioned that there's unused Freddy voice lines that say that the stations got hacked. However, firstly, that means nothing since it's unused, therefore it's not canon. Secondly, it still makes no sense, because if he's able to escape, why have the save stations? Like, why hack them at all? It doesn't really make sense unless you want to screw with the business, since in the world of the game, the save stations do nothing for Gregory. They only help us in the game sense. Do you get it? Halfway through into number 5, post-game. Honestly, I'm fine with the DLC taking place post-game, and it would make the most sense. However, I don't want to see a post-game DLC where you can't save the entire time. And that's what I fear the most when it comes to Security Breach, okay? If we're getting a whole new section of the game, basically a new game in and of itself, we'd better be able to save throughout it, which Steelwool might see as actually compromising the intended difficulty of the post-game, so I don't know what they're going to do. I had to put it out there again. If this is going to be some post-game DLC, you need to make sure that saving is allowed, even if the save spots are only available like in the sections pertaining to the DLC while the DLC is active or something like that, because otherwise it's going to be too much of a pain in the ass to actually get through. And I don't know how many people will actually want to play it if it's that way. Rather, they'd probably end up just wanting to watch someone else play it, which is fine if the person you're watching play it is me. And at 4 questions. When we get this DLC, if they do end up making one at least, I don't want to be left with more questions than we had at the end of the main game, alright? Scott loves to clear things up from previous games with the next one, and a DLC is a perfect way to do this. And he did this with FNAF VR and its Curse of Dreadbear DLC, with confirming that Glitch Trap was meant to be acted. So, if we come out of this DLC with more questions than answers, while in typical FNAF fashion, I'm still not going to be a happy overnight camper. Like, bro, can you just like throw us a bone once and tell us like one of the big mysteries we have, or give us answers for that, like how Gregory and Vanessa know each other seemingly, or if Gregory is a robot, or who Client 46 is. Please, just give me that instead of questions. and I'll be happy. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, time travel. Seeing a giant ball pit for the first time in an actual FNAF game that wasn't when you had to buy it interests me, alright? Specifically because of the Fazbear Frights books and Into the Pit and the story of the same name. Since in that story we see Oswald, who could travel between 2011 and 1985 by jumping into a ball pit in his local pizzeria that actually used to be a Fazbear joint. And honestly, that book being released and then the ball pit appearing in the FNAF game does not seem like a coincidence. So it could be possible that we see time travel in this DLC, especially if they wanted to relate it back to the books and the Fazbear Frights books. However, this would be an absolutely terrible idea. Okay, I've once said that this could be a great way to change between in-game times. However, the whole day and night mechanic isn't a thing in the game. So unless they introduce that with this time-traveling ball pit, or one of the ball pits being able to time travel, it would be a bit much. And honestly, it would probably ruin the DLC, if that's the thing. So if you're gonna make like a day as well as a night, then okay, I'll allow it, but if you're not introducing that, there's no point in a time-traveling ball pit. Penultimately, in at number 2, more Pizza Plex. Okay, so the Pizza Plex is already pretty damn big. It's confusing to get the places you need to go. There are a couple shortcuts, but it is still difficult to get to certain places. I personally end up going probably the most complicated ways to get back to the main atrium and the like, because I can't be bothered trying to find my way around. But going through the Rockstar row vents to get down to parts and service through Roxy's room is the one way I know works. However, adding more sections to the already confusing Pizzaplex could do more harm than good, and when it comes to something like this, you can't really add a different world space unless you make the story way too complicated. With something like Skyrim, the Forgotten Vale and Solstheim makes sense. However, with FNAF, you can't really have a whole separate area because the whole game takes place in a Pizzaplex and not a specific province of a whole established world. So more Pizzaplex, while potentially making sense, could end up being counterproductive, especially depending on where we need to go. Maybe use spaces that we've already been in, or add fast travel. And finally, in at number 1, cash grab. The biggest concern that I have with a Security Breach DLC is the possibility of the DLC just really being a cash grab. And while most DLCs could be considered cash grabs, it's really a risk with FNAF in general, especially being new to DLC, like they only have had like one. And like previously mentioned, the confines of the Pizzaplex. If it was something simple like mini games or multiplayer possibilities, I could see it, but the game was already $50. Add on to that the $25 or so that the DLC would run for, and you have the price of some of the highest end games, especially new games. So if there isn't enough content to justify that, I'd be worried about the future for the series, especially since we don't really know the motivations of the person taking over next, because we don't know who is taking over next. It's a slippery slope with a cash grab DLC, and honestly, if there's not enough content or mystery to justify the purchase, I'm probably not going to be purchasing it, despite being a FNAF tuber at this point. Yeah, that's what my life has come to. God damn it.